Mockingbird by Walter Tevis, published in 1980. It is a science fiction dystopia. I don't like to say that a book rises above its genre, so I won't say that. I will say that even if you are not interested in science fiction or dystopias, you should not skip Mockingbird by Walter Tevis, published in 1980. I'm looking at you, Dad. So allow me to make my case for why Mockingbird should be read alongside all other 20th century classics. So stick with me because we're going to cover a lot of ground, from Idiocracy to T.S. Eliot. But we're going to do it quickly. We're not going to linger too long. This is a heavy subject, and I don't want this to be too heavy of a message. In the book reviews that I do for this channel, I don't like to spend too much time summarizing the novel. But in this case, I have to go over a few important points before we get into the analysis. I will be as brief as possible, so hang in there. So it is 400 years into the future, and instead of there being a massive overcrowded Earth, in the 25th century, we are looking at a human population of about 16 million. That is spread all across the entire world. Compounding this calamity is that the birth rate has dropped to zero, and nobody cares. Nobody cares because we are drugged out of our minds. This apocalyptic world is crawling with robots, the robot overlords. But the robots didn't win some revolt against humanity. They didn't undertake some Asimov-style uprising. Instead, we humans created the robots to take over all of life's work. So from like transportation to manual labor, the medical field, the administration of drugs, and then the city bureaucracy, and one thing after another, humans ceded their power to the robots. Here you go. It's all yours, we said, and the robots accepted our gift, and we retired to generations of leisure. When the book opens, we are introduced to the greatest of these robots, a robot named, Robert Spawforth. He has the run of the world. He is a capable genius made of programmable flesh. He is immortal. He is a one-robot bureaucracy. But unlike other despots in our history, Spawforth is the anonymous authoritarian. Nobody cares who's in charge. Nobody cares, and nobody's happy. In fact, unhappiness is the, principal emotion experienced by every human we encounter in Mockingbird. In fact, the unhappiness is so rampant that it's not uncommon for groups of humans to gather together in a drugged stupor and set themselves on fire to end their unhappiness. When not setting themselves alight, humans spend a lot of time watching TV. The state broadcasts a single channel, and it plays a lot of pornography and other vapid but sort of tantalizing things. People do not so much watch television shows as they just watch TV. And nobody can read. Reading is a lost art. There's no signs anywhere. The cereal boxes have pictures of Jesus Christ on them. Not because anybody knows who Jesus Christ is, but the robot's thinking is that due to some vestigial intelligence, humans will trust the Jesus face on the box, and they will think that the cornflakes are good for them to eat. The few surviving humans in this age also have no sense of their history. They don't even have it's not that they don't know their history, they don't even have the sense that there could be something that came before them. So complete is their stupor and their ignorance. These humans are unbothered, incurious, and truly very deeply unhappy drones. And this would be an extremely depressing book were it not for some cracks in the pavement. And these cracks are Paul and Mary Lou. These are the heroes of our story. Paul and Mary Lou have, through their own set of circumstances, undertaken personal awakenings. With their primal curiosity intact, Paul and Mary Lou set to break the mold. Paul stumbles upon these early literacy books, like these Dick and Jane Learn How to Read books, and he teaches himself how to read and slowly moves up to more difficult books. He finds a dictionary to teach him new words. Mary Lou, at a young age, had escaped the brainwashing primary school and managed to find a way to live on her own outside of the city. Free from this brainwashing, Mary Lou teaches Paul that nonconformity is possible, and Paul teaches Mary Lou the critical skill of reading. Mockingbird, in large part, is actually a love letter to reading, and there's a lot of time, especially at the beginning of the novel, dedicated to Paul's newfound love for reading. And even though I've been a lifelong reader, I still felt like this resurgent love for probably my favorite hobby. And so just that alone was worth the price of admission. So together, Paul and Mary Lou really foster this awakening within each other. And that's what the beginning of the book is primarily concerned with. That is until Spofford discovers them and separates them, just as they are really coming into their full potential. So the rest of Mockingbird is concerned with the question that if Paul and Mary Lou can't subvert Spofford's will to dominate the human race and keep us in its drugged stupor and find a solution to this birth rate of 0, humanity is doomed to extinction within a generation. And with all the self-immolations happening everywhere, human population is declining very quickly, and this generation isn't long for this world. So these unhappy drones that populate the cities, these people are few and far between, and they're really unthinking, and they don't really talk to each other. In fact, one of the brainwashing tenets is mandatory privacy, where they're not really permitted to be inquisitive and to talk to each other and to ask questions. They don't ask any questions. In fact, the motto of this world is "Don't ask, relax," meaning don't think about anything, don't inquire about anything, chill out, take your pills, and just wait to die, basically. To say that these people are stupid is a massive understatement. There's nothing going on intellectually with the human race. And so here's a fact that's true. For the last 50 years, since 1975, IQs around the world have been in decline. In 2018, a pair of scientists named Brodsberg and Rogeberg wrote a paper called "The Flynn Effect and its Reversal Are Both Environmentally Caused." So at the beginning of the 20th century, IQs were on the rise, and they continued to rise year after year until 1975. This rise is called the Flynn Effect. And so the paper is talking about the Flynn Effect and its reversal. Okay, and the reversal now means that the IQs are on the decline, and they've been on the decline for 50 years. And so the theory put forth here, or the thesis put forth here, is that this has environmental factors. This is caused by our environment. So nutrition is a big one of the environmental factors, but there's also, they're just like going and going. Media environment that we're living in. The fact that people are online more and are reading less. So in general, and this is not true for everybody, but people are thinking less. We are less reliant on our critical faculties than we have been in half a century. But in my opinion, we're also handicapping ourselves by relying on other people's opinions. Don't ask, relax. And you can't watch a YouTube video in this day and in this age without people talking about how incurious we've become, how chronically online we are. We all know that. We're probably all on our phones way, way, way too much. That's true. And that's not really the point of this video. I don't need to hammer that point home. That's just a given at this stage of the game. So we're not so much exercising our intellect as much as we used to, as much as we are excising our intellect. That's me being clever for the day. We are ceding our thought processes to others. We are outsourcing our intellect. And now, instead of being intellectually honest with ourselves, we tend to live in these nested emotional responses that we get from external quarters. The 2006 film Idiocracy by Mike Judge notices this decline in IQ and puts forth a theory that morons are having more children than smart people. So these morons are passing their idiocy to their children, and smart people don't have any children to pass their intelligence to. So the world is getting dumber and dumber, and a whole government in idiocracy is formed around stupid people. The thing is, this theory is known as the dysgenic fertility theory, and it's not true. But what is true is that IQs are on the decline. It's just that the cause of this is these environmental factors. And the good news is we have control over our environment. We can control what we put in our bodies. We control what we put in our heads. It's almost become passé at this point to call Idiocracy a documentary of our times. But everybody is seeing more and more a reflection of our society in this film, the ridiculous depths to which we have fallen, even in the 19 years since this film was released. So my point in bringing this up at all is that the authors, and I gotta look up their names again, Brotsberg and Rogerberg, say that the rise and fall of our intellect, this ebb and flow of our intellect, is environmental, and we control that. It is in our power to change that. We, the people, have the power. In the middle chapters of Mockingbird, Paul, in his exile, encounters a group of people living outside of known society. This enclave has pushed through the state-sanctioned confirmation norms. They have somehow escaped the brainwashing. They are free from the control of the drugs that are administered to everybody in the cities. Yet they still suffer from this incuriosity. But despite this ignorance, they are dead set on establishing a new world for themselves. And this enclave is evocative of the Sacred Mount. Back in the 5th century BC, the plebeian class of the ancient Roman Empire abandoned Rome and built a camp outside the city called the Sacred Mount. In this, the plebeians protested the patrician class and capricious despots of Rome. This is generally considered to be the first strike in human history, and as a result, the patricians formally legislated citizen rights in what became known as the Laws of the 12 Tables. These were the foundation of Roman law for the next 1,000 years. And if you're curious about this, I've got some links in the description that talk more about that. But the point here is that history tells us that when power is ceded to a few elites, those elites then wrest more power than they were originally given until the people rise up and retake the power for themselves. The people always have more power than the ruling class. Human history is nothing if not the ebb and flow of power between the ruling class and the common people. For as long as we've been trying to govern ourselves, this ebb and flow has been as constant as the tides of the moon. And like the tides of the moon, this cycle isn't about to break anytime soon. So this ceding of power and this intellectual incuriosity on such a scale has historical precedent as well. And we don't have to look any further than post-World War I. T.S. Eliot's poem, The Hollow Men, was written with this observation in mind. All right, so let's take a look at a few lines. We are the hollow men. We are the stuffed men, leaning together, headpiece filled with straw. Alas, our dried voices, when we whisper together, are quiet and meaningless as wind in dry grass. Here the speaker aligns himself with hollow people, and this is a metaphor for the state of cultural decay, especially in Europe following World War I. In Europe, there was a general malaise following the armistice. People were so worn out and so dispirited by the loss of life and the long, dark years of war. They left the decisions in the hands of the bureaucrats, and very few voices of dissent arose during this time. And so T.S. Eliot is calling out to these people in this poem, The Hollow Men, trying to awaken them and to show them their voices are dry. So the speaker of Eliot's poem describes his fellow hollow men as being inhuman. There, the eyes are sunlight on a broken column. There is a tree swinging, and voices are in the wind singing, more distant and more solemn than a fading star. Though this isn't necessarily a religious poem, the eyes here is a symbol of God's judgment, and the broken column is a symbol of the fallen Western culture. In the 25th century New York City, where Mockingbird is set, the last standing skyscraper is the Empire State Building. Everything else has been demolished. The Empire State Building itself is crumbling. It is a broken column. It is most definitely a symbol of the decline of Western culture. It is a tombstone. The survivors of World War I, as described by Eliot, and the survivors into the 25th century, as described by Tevis, are empty, ineffectual people. Eliot suggests that redemption is possible and that it is within the people's control, whether that is a reconnection with their God or it is through education and the arts and culture and their emotional connection with others. And that is the same thing, the exact same thing that Tevis suggests in Mockingbird. Between the conception and the creation, between the emotion and the response, falls the shadow. Life is very long. Between the desire and the spasm, between the potency and the existence, between the essence and the descent, falls the shadow. In Mockingbird, the fall of Western civilization into its collective soper is the thing that detaches items from their function, facts from their meaning, and this dismantling of the entirety of human history. The most important message of T.S. Eliot's The Hollow Men comes in the last two lines, and these are lines you've absolutely heard before. This is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but a whimper. Now, I do encourage you to go back at some point, especially if you're curious about this, and go read the entire poem. It opens with two epigraphs. The first of these epigraphs reads, "Mr. Kurtz, he dead." This line comes from Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. Mr. Kurtz was a European ivory trader in Africa who set himself up as a god to the native Africans. Kurtz is emblematic of the perils of colonialization and is therefore a symbol of the hubris of Western culture and the decline of man. And Kurtz dies miserable and alone. So by using the phrase, "Mr. Kurtz, he dead," as the first epigraph to The Hollow Men, T.S. Eliot is telling Europeans in post-World War that unless they correct their course, they too will die miserable and alone. And it'll be their fault. This is the exact same sentiment echoed by Walter Tevis in Mockingbird, referring now to the entire hollow human race that is doomed to die miserable and alone unless we correct our course. Sorry about that. I had to stop recording for a little bit, but I am back now and ready to finish this video. For you, it was just a split second, but for me, it's been about 45 minutes. So, where the hell was I? Oh, the second epigraph of The Hollow Man is "A penny for the old guy." This is a reference to Guy Fawkes, a revolutionary who is remembered in England on the 5th of November by burning straw effigies. The hollow men of Eliot's poem are but effigies. They are fake and inhuman. The straw men of Walter Tevis's Mockingbird actually literally set themselves on fire. So Mockingbird is written directly in response to The Hollow Men. It is a novelization of The Hollow Men, in a manner of speaking. So Walter Tevis is a more than capable author. I'm actually really impressed by his ability to write across genres. His only other sci-fi novel, to my knowledge, was The Man Who Fell to Earth, adapted into the David Bowie movie. But he also wrote The Hustler and Color of Money, adapted into Paul Newman movies. And he wrote The Queen's Gambit, a chess movie that's on Netflix now. Concerning Mockingbird, Tevis executes his craft at a very high level across all categories. The narrative is concise, the stakes are well understood, every scene carries a lot of weight and import. The futurescape has a very strong sense of time and place. And every major idea here is very well explored. The narrative here is just chock-a-block with small details hinting at a larger world. Small things emblematic of so much more. The characters, few as they are all remarkably distinct. The good, the bad, the sorrowful, all distinct, personable, and relatable. The prose is also pretty good. It's brief, punchy, and descriptive. Yet, it's the thematic elements of Mockingbird that are off the charts. So like I said before, Mockingbird, like most other entries into the dystopian sci-fi genre, is a warning. Do not surrender your individuality. Do not surrender your rights. Do not surrender your curiosity. Don't let anybody tell you what you want or need. That way, oblivion lies. These are the things that make us human, and surrendering them, whether it be to the robots of tomorrow or the authoritarians of today, will result in a calamitous implosion of society. It may seem like we've heard this story before. And in fact, Mockingbird is derivative of a lot of the dystopian science fiction works that precede it. In 1984, talks about the state-controlled flow of information, state-sanctioned social behaviors. Mockingbird is derivative of Anthem by Ayn Rand and We by Yevgeny Zamyatin, in that it features a man and a woman who experience emotional, intellectual, and sexual awakenings with one another. And the men and women in those novels turn against their monolithic governments in revolt, just as Paul and Mary Lou do in Mockingbird. Mockingbird is probably most similar to Brave New World, where the society is placated by soma. You give away your individual personhood, your individuality. What I'm trying to say is that Mockingbird deserves its place among all of these dystopian novels, not because it's completely different, but because they're all shades of a possible future. As outlandish and ridiculous and implausible as they are, they're all warning us about different versions of our complacency and different possible outcomes. And in Mockingbird, we are presented with the perfect hellscape. Mankind's self-march into our own destruction. The human race's fellow d'essai. It's remarkable to me how a book like Mockingbird can depict such grotesque calamity and darkness and squalor that in the end it's not depressing, because the message is one of very optimistic hope. We have the power to take a stand, to defend our rights, to defend our intellectual honesty and our spiritual curiosity, to protect those rights and that curiosity, and to foster that in our neighbors. Don't surrender to the authoritarians of today, and don't give away your power to the robots of the future or the robot in your hand. Don't give it that power. Claim it for yourself. And in the meantime, celebrate the fact that you can read. And read something good.